On air. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of day. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active um, global meetup. Um, it's called Large Scale Scrum, but it really encapsulates organizational design, system thinking, system modeling, product centricity, and business agility under the same umbrella. Today we have a special guest, Tom Jans, who is joining us from Belgium. Uh, well, first of all, first and foremost, Tom was one of the highly recognized and honored speakers at the most recent Large Scale Scrum conference in Amsterdam this year. And just a few words about Tom. He's a freelance Agile coach and certified LeSS Scrum Master since 2019. He has supported several LeSS transformations in the Belgian public sector and has spoken at multiple global LeSS conferences. Tom is a generalist and natural system thinker. He connects diverse areas of expertise and perspective. He has degrees in both engineering and philosophy and approaches organizational change with a rare blend of analytical rigor and human insight. So without any further ado, Tom, I would like to pass the baton over to you. You have the podium and you do control everything. So thank you very much for doing it.
Yes, thank you, Gene, for this opportunity. I'm on a mission to make philosophy sexy again. So any opportunity I get to find new allies, I take with both hands. And I hope to find some here today. Philosophy is a big word, but in reality, it's all common sense. And to show this to you, I would like to start off with this little story and question to the people who are listening. And I wonder, what would you do in this situation? I'm a Scrum Master. This is a situation that is very familiar to me and maybe to other people here. But so the team has missed the sprint goal again. The head of engineering is furious and saying that if they don't start meeting commitments, then heads will roll. And we all know what that means. You know that the team has nearly finished a long anticipated feature. And in fact, the backend is completely ready and they have to test to prove that it works. The UI needs a bit of tweaking. The UX lead formally has to sign off before it can be released. But you know, he's away for 2 weeks. The next feature on the backlog has been refined and is ready to implement, but you know, it might take more than a sprint to get it done. So imagine you're the Scrum Master in this situation. Sprint planning is about to start. What would you do? So that's my question to you. Take a minute to think about it. I think there are two obvious options. Maybe you can come up with other options. Since the group doesn't seem to be too huge, I think anyone who has an idea of what they would do can just unmute their microphone and speak up. Anyone, what would you do?
Folks, like Tom said, it's a small group and you don't have to shy away from engaging. So just yell out, raise a hand.
It's Mal here. I basically would go ahead with finishing the UX, and even though the person who needs to sign off on it is not there, I wouldn't hold up the entire project because of that.
Okay. I see Doug writing in the chat to have a discussion with the team. Very good. I'm curious, when you choose what to do, what makes you choose one thing over the other? Maybe Malcolm, why did you make that choice?
Well, I mean, for me, I can just tell you what motivates me is a lot of things, but fear of failure motivates me. And actually, I think that if you've got somebody, if the head of engineering is interested and has been more or less tracking what's going on and says, "Hey, you guys have got a history of not delivering," and then you have something that basically is more or less in the bag. And if you're iterating on it, you're really, really close. And it'd be better to get it in front of people and have them tell you about it than it would be to sit on it until A, the deadline's gone, there's even more pressure, and B, you know, the UX lead can always give you more feedback when he or she gets back. But delaying everything until just because one person's on vacation, I just don't see is a big win.
Excellent. Thanks for your answer. So in philosophy, I find that often the more questions you have, or the more philosophical you get about your questions, the simpler the questions become. And there are a few options here. And basically, I think they boil down to these three options. First of all, which of the options would generate the best outcomes, which I think, Malcolm, is what you were describing, right? So you try to weigh up, if I take option A, what will be the outcome? What is the outcome if I take option B? And I choose which generates the best outcomes for me, for my team, for society as a whole. So that's one very helpful question to help you steer your thinking in this question of what would you do. I think another valid question is to ask, what do the rules say, right? The rules are there for a reason. We think they are good rules usually. And in fact, here are some of the rules that Scrum prescribes. And I think we can agree that following the rules in this case would make you choose a different option than the question about outcomes. Right? If you follow the rules, then obviously we don't deliver this long anticipated feature and carry on with the sprint planning as it is prescribed. So these questions are typically quite modern questions. And by modern, I mean from the 1700s. Focusing on outcomes is what philosophy calls consequentialism. And if you choose this line of reasoning, you're in very good company. Jeremy Bentham was one of the people who made one of the modern thinkers who went along this line and based pretty much all of the question, what would you do? He based it on outcomes. Peter Singer is a contemporary example. Spock from Star Trek, sorry. Hope I didn't offend anyone. What do the rules say? I think Moses was a big proponent of following this line of reasoning. Immanuel Kant is a famous philosopher who was a deontologist, as they say. A more contemporary example, I think, is John Rawls. But the question that I personally find more useful is, what would a good Scrum Master do? Which kind of combines both of these previous questions and then some more things. So in this field of philosophy, that would be called virtue ethics. And Aristotle is the historic example of the first guy who came up with this, or at least who wrote it down, and that we still have evidence for. But quite a modern example is Alasdair MacIntyre, who wrote the book After Virtue. So I think all these three questions are useful when deciding what to do, but I think the third one has more depth to it. And that's why I think Aristotle and virtue ethics can really help us to decide these questions. So yeah, like Gene already introduced me, I'm a freelance Agile coach. One thing I want to add, I have three lovely children who are being suspiciously quiet at this moment. Hopefully they stay that way. So Aristotle, our friend that we will spend the next 44 minutes talking about. He lived 2,400 years ago, basically, in the puzzle of nation states that is now Greece. He was one of the first philosophers. He was a student of Plato. Plato was a student of Socrates. He was also the private teacher to Alexander of Macedon, who then later on went on to conquer all of the known world. And he was the founder of the Lyceum, a school in Athens, where people could get knowledge and teach each other. Often he would do these teaching sessions while walking. So you could say that Aristotle kind of invented the stand-up. That's not the only reason why I take a big inspiration from him. He was father of logic. He wrote down how to think correctly, which is known as syllogism. An example of a syllogism is right here. You have one premise that says all men are mortal. You have another premise that says Socrates is a man, which leads us to the conclusion that Socrates is mortal. So some combinations of all are something and none are something, and some are and some are not. Some of these combinations lead to correct logic and sound reasoning. This is a case that is sound reasoning. So if for some reason you don't agree with the conclusion, what you have to do is show which of the two premises that you don't agree with. So a little exercise for you guys. There are two syllogisms right here. All Agile teams do retrospectives. This team does retrospectives. Therefore, this is a real Agile team. Another one, some organizations don't do less. Less improves over the long term. Therefore, some organizations don't improve over the long term. We think both of these are sound, correct reasoning. I see Doug shaking his head. Which one is false, do you think? Number one, yes, I agree. Thanks to Aristotle's logic and his work, we can clearly show this, right? So clear thinking, logical thinking, what can we conclude from what? It's one of the things that Aristotle helped us to get a lot better at. And in fact, his kind of logic was not improved until about 2,000 years later. Boolean logic and all that, which I hope is very familiar to all of us. But so for 2,000 years, logic meant Aristotle and syllogism. Another thing that I think he's the father of science, because he assumed that knowledge starts with observation. So here we have a picture made by Raphael in the early 1500s, which is called the School of Athens. Maybe some of you know it. On the left here, we have Plato. He's pointing upwards, ideas, abstract things that become concrete in reality. And on the right, we have Aristotle pointing down, saying, no, it's the other way around. It has to go bottom up. We have to start with observation, start with specific instances, and then maybe we can generalize things from all those observations. So we go from particular cases to general principles. In Greek, this practical wisdom is called phronesis. So it's a kind of knowing that is really grounded in reality, observation, empiricism. For example, he made a lot of observations about animals, which he wrote down in this book, Historia Animalium. For example, he noticed that chickens lay their eggs at the same time, and usually before dawn, or octopi can change color. Starting from observation, making generalizations. But so we're here mainly to talk about his ethical theories and how it can help us be better at our jobs. His theory is about being a good person, and I think the best way to explain it is to use an analogy. So asking what does it mean to be a good person is very similar to what does it mean to be a good knife, right? So he would say, well, it's pretty simple. A good knife is a knife that cuts well, and cutting is what a knife is for. That's what its purpose is. That's what its functions. And also that's the thing that sets it apart from all the other things that are not knives, right? So imagine you have a knife that's not very sharp. In fact, it gets so dull that it doesn't cut anything anymore. I think at that moment you would stop calling it a knife and you might start calling it a spatula, for example. Right? So now let's apply this kind of thinking to what does it mean to be a good person. One might say the function of a person is procreation, like making babies. Let's examine it. Who here thinks that being good at procreation makes you a good person? Probably not so many. And in fact, the questions he asks, procreation is not something that sets us apart from all the other animals. Therefore, it cannot be our telos, our function. And unfortunately, being good at procreation does not make you a good person. Doesn't make you a bad person either. According to Aristotle, the function of a person is activity of soul in accordance with reason, and man is a rational animal. So being a good person means all those things, mainly to be a reasonable person. That is what sets us apart from all the other animals, etc. And then to be a very good person means, he says, the highest good, the best thing we can try to achieve is to have excellent exercise of the intellect. And some Greek words. If we have excellent exercise of the intellect, we reach eudaimonia, meaning good spirit. So the highest good of being a person is not necessarily feeling very happy or joyful. It's better translated as flourishing, right? Being good at being a person is what is a good person. So for Aristotle, it's all about the pursuit of excellence. There's a Latin word, virtus. Vir is the Latin word for men. So virtus means the excellent qualities of men, of people, we would say now. So these are qualities that good people have. And he distinguishes two categories: the intellectual virtues, which means thinking excellently, and the moral virtues, which is about acting excellently. The intellectual virtues you can develop by studying, by reading, by doing maths, by studying philosophy. The moral virtues, however, you can only develop by doing them. And by doing them, you get better at them, of course. You cannot study your way into acting better. And so virtue ethics basically means looking at what is purpose, what are qualities that you need in order to fulfill this purpose, and focusing on those virtues. And that's something we'll try to do for our jobs later in this session. A little trick to help us identify these virtues is to look at exemplars. So perhaps we can come up with some examples, real people or fictional examples of what we all agree are good people, and then ask the question, what is it about them that makes them so good? And what are their qualities? So there are some examples here. You might recognize a few. You might have some personal exemplars, some coach that helped you in your sports career, a teacher, a parent, a good friend, where you say that's a really good person and they are good because they have these and these qualities. And that's what Aristotle calls a virtue. And he comes up with a list of his own. What are the virtues of good people? For example, courage, temperance, modesty, patience. So in order to be a good person, we must have these moral virtues. To become a good person, we have to develop these good virtues by acting, right? So if you want to become more patient, for example, which is one of my personal challenges, any opportunity that presents itself to practice patience is something that can help me become a better person. And that's how I try to see situations where I have to be patient, to see it as an opportunity to practice patience and becoming a better person. A famous example of like courage, Aristotle talks, for example, about a courageous soldier, right? A good soldier helps to win wars. You need courage for that. And, opposed to the virtue of courage, there is the vice of cowardice. If I'm too cowardly to engage in battle, I cannot help not help you win, so I wouldn't be a good soldier. But maybe the opposite of cowardice, where before all my fellow soldiers are ready, I run towards the enemy, I stab my sword into some of them, and then they kill me, would also not make me a good soldier. So a virtue is between two vices, right? In the case of courage, I could become reckless, and that would not help me be a better soldier. Just like being a coward would also not help me be a better soldier. And so virtues we can see as the golden mean between two vices, the vice of deficiency and the vice of excess. And this is actually some trying to place where is this virtue helps, at least me, in particular situations, right? If I need to be courageous, I can ask myself the question, in this situation, how can I act so that I don't act cowardly and I don't act recklessly either? So in a very brief nutshell, this is Aristotle. I hope you agree with me that he's a pretty interesting person. And this is his theory of virtue ethics, which he applies to being a good person, but which we will apply to our job, our role that we have, because it will help us get better at our job. So again, in my case, I'm a Scrum Master. So the question that Aristotle tells me to ask is, first of all, what is the function of a Scrum Master? What is my telos? What makes me unique compared to other roles? That will help me focus my function and make it more precise. What are some examples of good Scrum Masters that I know that maybe as a community we agree on? And then I can ask, okay, what qualities make them good? But where is the golden mean? And in fact, I kind of lost track of how many people are here. 18. I would like to invite you to the Miro board again, where we can go into breakout groups.
Tom, are you having trouble with that? Or you can do it yourself, right?
Can I do it myself?
You should be able to go to.
I don't see a button. I'm not very familiar with Zoom.
Okay, let me see if I can help you out here.
Yeah.
So under more, there are three buttons, three dots horizontally. At the very top says breakout rooms.
Yes.
See it?
I don't see breakout. Oh, something
You
was
don't?
just.
Okay, let me do it.
No, I don't see.
Let me do it
Sorry.
for you. We're gonna split in. How many teams do you want?
Well, we're 18 people. I hope all of us are able to interact and use the Miro board. I will put that Miro board in the chat.
So how many breakout rooms do you want? Two, three?
3 will be fine.
Three. Okay, so I'm gonna do it automatically.
Yeah,
Randomly.
Yeah, I will put a link to the Miro board here in the chat.
All right. So tell me
There you
when to go.
go.
Tell me
Yes.
when. Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you when. So what we have in the Miro board is a little template for you guys to fill out. First of all, which is the role that you would like to get better at? And then have a little discussion, try to come up with a description of what is this role for, what is its telos, what is its function, what makes it unique, unlike other roles, and try to come up with some examples, people that you agree are good at that role. So that then you have something to anchor your discussion on, okay, what are the qualities that make these people good at their role? Or what are the properties that a good Scrum Master needs to have?
Tell me when to open.
Are there any questions about what this assignment entails? So if you're a Scrum Master, do it like this. If you're a
What's the
project
time
manager,
box?
yeah, we'll take 10 minutes for this.
All right, I'm ready to open. Going once, twice. Yes?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
here we go.
Right. Back. Thanks, Gene, for managing breakout rooms. So probably 10, 11 minutes will not be enough to finish this discussion. But it's enough to have kind of a sample how these questions that Aristotle proposes, how they can really steer our thinking and make these questions very precise. At least that's our experience. So this is something that we came up with in our breakout group. We talked about the role of being a Scrum Master. We defined its function as to help the team become better at Scrum. And then we came up with a few virtues. And we noticed the question of, for example, when a situation arises that requires persuasion, you can ask yourself, as a Scrum Master, how can I be persuasive without being overly agreeable, but also without bullying? So where in this situation would the golden mean of being persuasive be between those two extremes? Breakout group 3 also talked about being a Scrum Master. Anyone here to give a quick summary of something that you discussed? Maybe not. The other room. There's here also. We also talked about being a Scrum Master. Okay, great.
Yeah, room number 3, we can spend some time. Room number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, room number 3 is the Scrum Master role. What is the function? So we agreed as a team. It's more like a facilitator, collaborator. You are there to enable the team, helping the team to create value. The role is unique, servant leadership, unlike a formal command and control. You lead the team by supporting them, right? By serving the team.
Yeah.
You
And that's
keeping
what makes the role of a
yeah,
Scrum Master, for
Scrum
example,
Master.
different than the line manager, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we also discussed about some qualities that makes it that role unique. One is active listening, very empathetic, understanding and empathizing with your team, good at conflict resolution and systems thinking. We came up with good coach, definitely good coach.
Yeah.
Deficiencies, we had some interesting discussion here when it comes to active listening. Talking all the time is one of the deficiency. Let the people talk. That is a deficiency. Excess is too much listening, and too sometimes we try to be too much very nice to people instead of kind. Right? We are not ready. We're not providing any candid, actionable feedback. We thought that is an excess.
Yeah.
Empathetic, overdoing it. Sometimes we overdo it. Try to accommodate so much with and missing the bigger picture. Conflict resolution, we thought conflict persists all the time. That means you know that you're not doing your job as a scrum master. You see that there is an underlying dysfunction within the team. And excess is you are becoming like a bottleneck. That team, without you, that team doesn't know what to do, right? So that is more like excess, doing that role too much. You are
Yeah.
letting the team is incapable of doing any resolution. We also discussed about coaching, so not creating inclusiveness of the team. That is one of the deficiency. Sometimes excess is we try to be the SME. For everything, I'm the expert. I know everything. So that
Yeah.
is means sometimes we are trying
Yeah.
to overdo that. We don't create that fine balance between the what is where is our role. Systems thinking. We just started discussing about it.
Yeah.
One is what we
But
thought is not understanding the impact on the other teams. You only focus on your team, your work. You don't understand the big picture. Excess is sometimes we understand the system, but instead of solving our problems, we try to solve the problems of the other teams instead of escalating. Many times we
yeah,
do not have a
totally.
control. We try to do,
Yeah.
solve that
So
problem.
I'm going to take over, Anu. Thank you
Yeah,
for your resume.
thank you.
I think this also shows, these conflicts that we feel internally. Using this lens of virtue ethics and golden mean, I think gives us some tools to have a more precise formulation and therefore also insight of, okay, what is exactly the conflict here, and what is the risk of doing too much or not enough of one thing. Cool. So I did this homework myself as well. I looked in the Scrum guide. The function of a Scrum Master is to establish Scrum according to our Scrum guide. Of course, this is quite personal, probably, but these are some of the examples that I see as good Scrum Masters. You might recognize a few or not. And some of my examples might not be Scrum Masters at all. Like my second job, I had a very good boss who was good at communicating. He wasn't officially a Scrum Master, but for that aspect, I take him as an example. All right. Some of the virtues that I came up with, and I think they're pretty similar to what we came up in our breakout rooms. Being persuasive without being domineering or bullying, but also without being passive. There we go.
So interesting. You mentioned pragmatic as the deficiency.
Yes. So pragmatic, the word pragmatic has many different meanings. There's actually a school of philosophy based mainly in North America that's called the pragmatics. In my surroundings, I see people call themselves pragmatic when they just go along with things.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hey, guys, 6-minute time check. Just want to make sure you using the Tom's time valuably. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. So just a quick wrap up. I have 5 more minutes, if you can bear with me. A quick wrap up. So what we talked about here, the philosophy of what should I do, is called ethics. I hope you agree that Aristotle is totally awesome for many reasons, but mainly because of his virtue ethics, which is about what would a good person do. And the steps to come to that, to a more of an answer, is define the telos, function, the goal, define the virtues, and see what's the golden mean between what and what. And so this really helps me in my role as Scrum Master, and you're all Scrum Masters. So the question, what would a good Scrum Master do, is super powerful, I find. To become more precise, what virtues do we think that a good Scrum Master has, and how can I display this virtue? How can I act in accordance with this virtue without being excessive or deficient? Right? But then, of course, the question, how does this make me a better Scrum Master? Aristotle would say, how does this make me a better person? But we're a bit more focused here. So, becoming better, it's all about the question of what should I do? And Aristotle's answer is, well, you have to do what a good person would do, which then, of course, begs the question, but then how do I know what a good person would do? Well, Aristotle would say, well, you'll know if you're a good person. Your question is, so how do I become a good person? And moral virtues you develop by acting. So you become a good person by doing what a good person does, right? Which feels very circular. But I have a slightly different mental image. I don't see a circle, I see a spiral, right? It's by doing things that make me be better. This helps me know better what is the right thing to do. And so by doing better things, I become better and I know what the right thing to do is. So in this way, there's a constant dance between doing and being and knowing, and it's an everlasting becoming. Right? So set out some target where, as maybe not a very good Scrum Master, I don't really know what a good Scrum Master would do. So I look at my exemplars to point me in a certain direction. I do those things and they make me better at being a Scrum Master. And that in turn helps me to get more insight and choosing, knowing what is the right thing to do. In modern day lingo, maybe we would call it fake it till you make it. All right. So that's the end of the presentation and the exercise here. I feel the hour has flown by. There's obviously a lot more to say and a lot more to think about. So I hope that this is kind of a start or a gentle push, a nudge into the direction of Aristotle or ethics or philosophy in general. As a coach and Scrum Master, I find huge amounts of inspiration in the philosophical tradition that has been going on for like 2,500 years, and very, very smart people have written down very interesting things. But also philosophy is a verb. It's something you do in interaction, in discussion, and according to Aristotle, also in action.
Tom, thank you very much for this great, inspiring, and unique presentation. It was really, it's a great combination of history, ancient history, and something that's so present and so vivid and current and modern. So thank you very much for this. Very entertaining. Folks, thank you very much for joining as well. I'm going to be working on this recording hopefully in the next few days, and we'll make it available to your colleagues if they want to replay it. Tom, personal thanks to you once again. If you do have a deck in the PDF format, could you please just send it to me so I can make it available?
Sure.
And
Will do.
I want to thank you once again for coming out. This is a pretty late hour for you, so enjoy it back there in Belgium. Enjoy the first snow, and send us some Belgian waffles.
I'll stick to the Belgian beer for now.
Absolutely. Say hello to Jurgen for me. Yeah, I'm sure you know him, right?
Will do. Will
Yeah.
do.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up, folks. Thanks God it's Friday, TGIF. Enjoy the rest of the day, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.